everybody. Welcome to POING's first panel of the day. Tonight is also the first event of the new POING series Beyond the Club, Collecting Minds and Communities. It is a series of collective experiences that, other than experiencing great music, as we're used to with POING, we have the chance to learn from one another, connect, and build from basically the ground up. My name is Antonina, and I will be moderating tonight's panel with these wonderful guests. Cara, who was supposed to be here initially, unfortunately couldn't be here, and I'm her stand-in. And yes, I just want to say I feel very thankful to be able to get a chance to talk to these lovely people and be a chance to share this experience with you all, and share and speak about this very important work that you all do. Today we're going to be discussing and sharing and learning from each other about all the facets that go into cultivating collectives and empowering communities. That includes navigating challenges, growth, internal dynamics of collective building, external pressures and changes, the good and the bad, always maintaining our core values and hopefully maintaining our sanities as well. We will begin with around 45 minutes of a panel discussion, and then we'll follow up with a little bit of a Q&A if anyone has any pressing or nice questions to ask. I'd like to welcome our panel. We have Veerle from Orphic and Sex Matters from Amsterdam. We have Arjan from Clau, and we have Val from Los Angeles. I'm so excited to be speaking to all of you today and discuss your wonderful work. All three of you are either part of collectives or have worked very closely to building and maintaining communities that you're affiliated with. You're also amazing and successful creatives on your own and in your own right, and activists. And yeah, maybe we can start very simply and get to know each other. And yeah, I'd like to get to know you a little bit more, and I think the audience would like that too. Maybe you could first tell us who you are, and secondly, introduce Orphic, Sex Matters, Clau, and Los Angeles for everybody. Yeah, Veerle, you want to start?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Veerle. I am a part of Orphic and part of Sex Matters, but I'll tell first a little bit who I am. Originally, I'm a dancer. That's also how I started working in nightlife many years ago, but I work mostly in like a more commercial field. I'm also a political scientist, studied that and focused more on international development and that kind of stuff. And I started working at Sex Matters, I think, 7 years ago, and Sex Matters is a foundation that gives trainings on social safety, safer clubbing, awareness team trainings, security trainings, and everything that regards also topics such as sexuality, gender, discrimination, and being yourself in the broadest sense of the term. And then a couple years later, I joined an organization in Amsterdam, which is called Orphic. Started off as a legal rave organization, and then later grew out to be a bit bigger. It's turned into more like a community event, turned into like a community space, and it's still evolving from there. But mostly we focus on like techno parties, raves, and community events next to that.
Perfect, thank you. Arjan, you want to take over?
Hi everyone, my name is Arjan, also DJ Shahmaran, prefer to have that name up for some reason. But I've been living in Rotterdam now for 7 years, and since I came here, I started going to the first 2 Clau parties, and since then became a part of Clau. Clau is a queer POC collective. In the beginning, we were kind of focusing mostly on giving a club night for Middle Eastern queers, but since then has kind of expanded beyond that to just being a community-run initiative. We threw club nights, did DJ workshops, we had 2 magazines as well, and we went on a very long break, but hopefully there's more to come soon, maybe, perhaps, who knows. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Val?
Hello, my name is Val. I'm part of Los Angeles Collective. together with Alma and Maria, who are not here tonight, but shout out to them. I guess what I can say is that Los Angeles was born out of conversations with trans girlfriends of mine about us sort of complaining about where's the trans girl DJs, organizers, where's the trans girls doing anything in the city. I'm from Amsterdam, by the way. Not from Amsterdam, but I've been living there for 9 years. And it all started with like doll dinners at home and us being like, why are we complaining and not doing something about it? So 2 years ago, we just decided to throw an event at Canal 40, which was our first party. And since then, it's just been organically growing and through more and more community events and parties. But we're not really like a party collective, we're more just like, I guess like a multidisciplinary collective that just does events for and by trans people. And also importantly that so far everyone has been welcome and we've been gathering a community that's quite diverse, which is really nice. But
Great, thank you so much. As you said, I'm going to follow up with what you said. A collective is often born out of people becoming aware that there's a lack. There's a lack of a space, there's a lack of a community, and people have this yearning and they have this desire to become part of something that's just not there. And like you said, if no one else will do it, why won't we do it? And why won't we just get up and do something? I'd like to refer to Mackenzie Work, who writes in Raving, club kids want to be seen because they're not seen anywhere else in their life. And in these communities and collectives, they're finally seen. And I feel like that's beautifully harking on what you guys are doing and all the work that you're putting out there. And I'd like to ask, how was the building process of these collectives for you guys? Where did it come from? I mean, Value already initiated this, but I'm curious what Arjan, how it was for you with Clau and integrating with Clau, something that was already established, and you as well with Warfic.
Turning my microphone on and off, just in case I say something. Same as with Los Angeles and probably with Orphic as well. We started because actually we had the Gender Clowns. They threw a party called Gender Bending Queer Party at Worm, and they're kind of like our 4 siblings or whatever you want to call it, our chosen family, who kind of have been very instrumental in us starting these parties, specifically when it comes to the kind of ethics we wanted to have in how we run a club night. And I think the difference for us was we really wanted to focus on queer people of color because we felt that there was less and less space for that in the city. And to be honest, it's the same as what Val is saying. Like, you just start out with a bunch of friends with an idea, you're dissatisfied with something, and instead of complaining about it, we wanted to do something about it. So, beyond that, it kind of grew into a community by itself. I think if you offer something that people want and are kind of like breathing for air to have, then people will flock to you regardless. And I think that's what we saw a lot with Clau over the years, is that a lot of people start looking at the parties and being like, ooh, we want some of that sauce as well. But you can't just grab and take it based off of what you're seeing if you aren't part of that community yourself. And I think that's, that's obviously what makes a huge difference in how the club nights go, or how we run things, or how we run events, etc. We always focused on booking people who are doing debut DJ sets, or are performing for the first time, or haven't performed much. And people always had a great time because the music was fucking good, you know? So, I think that's kind of how it just naturally came together.
Wonderful, thank you. Val? Oh, sorry. Veerle?
It's okay. Actually, for Orphic, it was super different. It was founded in 2019 with 3 friends who just wanted to throw an illegal rave somewhere in a field of grass. And yeah, it was really funny because back then in 2019, the majority of the illegal raves in Amsterdam were more housey and they wanted to throw like a more techno-y party, so they did. And they just wanted to do it small, and then 600 people showed up. So everyone was like, oh shit, there's a lot of people here. And then they did it again, and then a lot of people came again. And that's kind of when they started to look like, hey, what kind of people are showing up? And they didn't start off as a queer rave, they just started off as 3 people throwing a party. But then when we looked at, I was not part of Orphic back then, by the way, but when they looked at the people that came, it was majority queer people, majority POC, people from like various different backgrounds. And then they thought, ah shit, okay, we also have a responsibility. If we have these groups and these communities in our spaces, then we also have to think about ways to keep them safe, ways to make sure that it's comfortable for everyone. And that's kind of how, after a while, Orphic also started evolving. So this was in 2019, then of course COVID happened, so everything was on break for 2 years. And I joined at the end of COVID, mostly because they needed someone to focus more like on the social safety and on the community aspect. And that's when I was brought in.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And I have a follow-up question to that. What do you think are the greatest challenges for maintaining this safety and this social care for people, especially you as basically managing this kind of social safety and making sure that everyone is feeling comfortable? And yeah, what do you think that the biggest challenges are going to be long-term for your collectives and for your communities? Anyone can start.
Should I? I think with Los Angeles, we trust our community to take care of each other as well. I think unfortunate things happen at parties or events, regardless of how much you try to keep people safe or yeah, so I think the way that we try to do it is by just also trusting the community that people are going to look out for each other, and so far, knock on wood, it's been going well. But it's also being realistic, you know, it's also about handling things when they go wrong and how you handle them. That's, I think, quite important. Also, we've always only worked with venues that we fully trust and they trust us. So it's important where you invite your community as well. You can't just do an event anywhere and in a space that there's no mutual trust, you know? So we've been very fortunate with venues that just provide that kind of safety just by being there, yeah.
Thank you so much, yeah. Arjun, do you have anything to add?
I think it's the same with Los Angeles, that the people who are there at your party largely determine how the party runs. So regardless of the measures that you take, it's hard to keep a place safe or safer if the people are not maybe reflecting the values that you're trying to aspire to. So that makes a huge difference. I mean, what we see nowadays a lot is more diverse lineups, but the same kind of crowd, right? Which makes me very uncomfortable to see places book majority POC DJs, but then a majority white crowd, for example. So that also obviously changes how the party is going to run. And next to that, it's just kind of, well, I mean, you probably also have a lot to say about that, because we had a training from one of the people from Sex Matters very early on, because they're also part of the gender bending crowd. It's things like having a good door host, making sure that people understand what the guidelines are, etc., of the night, how it's going to go. And I think one of the things that we did that I think maybe set us apart from a lot of other places is that our door hosts did not check people based off of what they looked like. It was always waiting to see how people would react to us asking them to listen and pay their respect to how we want to set the intentions for the club night. And the reason why I'm mentioning that as a really important thing is because I've had friends of mine who are Moroccan and gay, for example, being denied from queer club nights because they look too masculine. And for us, it was really important that we tried to provide a space for people where if you're new to queer nightlife, you still feel like you're a part of this community, regardless if your aesthetic, for example, doesn't necessarily represent that. So I think that's, this is the difference between these clubs like Berghain or whatever, where people just kind of go based off of vibes or how they feel. So I think that's kind of, how we try to... The challenges part of your question maybe later, because I feel like there's a lot to say on that.
Yeah,
can I
really,
just add one thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think it's what Arjun is saying is like that. Also, I think that one of the main points of our collective is like the point is that, for example, for us trans people, especially trans femmes, are represented on the lineups and behind the scenes and everything. But the goal is to have everyone be there. So indeed, like we have many like just not to sound like generalizing, but like just normie straight guys coming, and maybe they just find the night fabulous and discover new things, and everyone is very much welcome. Indeed, I also find it very problematic when people are denied at the door just because they look a certain way. So yeah, also like being sitting down with the club staff beforehand and like really also briefing everyone and being personally connected to the staff of the place where you go and organize things is really important. So yeah,
Of course, like facilitating a safe space for not only the people that are attending and people who are performing, but also the people who are behind the scenes and who really work to make an event work, basically, and make it run smoothly. Veerle, do you have anything to add before we
Yeah, I
move on?
think I very much agree with what's been said before. I think one thing that we try to do at Orphic as well is that everyone gets a chance to come. Like, we're not going to base on how you look, we're just going to base on if you're friendly and if you're open to coming in with us and trying. And we've had cases, because you've asked challenges, so we've had cases where people came in and they just said they were curious and wanted to see, and we were like, okay, welcome. This is all the things we really care about, norms and values, and where after an hour, from both sides, was not a match. And sometimes that can happen. There were people and I addressed them and I said, hey, how's your night going? Are you having fun? And this person was like, whoa, I've never been in a place like this before. And at some point I asked them like, hey, are you sure you want to be here then? And they were like, well, I might leave. And I think that's ultimately what we are trying to look for, is that we give people a chance to see if it matches with them or not. And also making people feel seen, taking them out of anonymity. So it's not just people come and consume, but people feel like they're contributing to the party because they feel like they've been seen by entering, by the way we interact with them, by the way we communicate everything. And I think that already really helps. And apart from that, yeah, of course, you also need policy. You also need to know, if this happens, what do we do? Who do we go to? What do we do next? What is our door policy? What are norms and values? What is our drug policy? And I think all of that kind of stuff, we've been really working on making that as concrete as possible in the last years. In the beginning, it was just going with the flow and winging it. But we've learned that it really helps to have a written out policy on what we stand for and what we want to achieve. So that also if something goes wrong, we can just explain, hey, I'm so sorry, but this is our policy. If you don't align with this, it's okay, but then this is not the event for you. And I think that really helped us in making it safer for everyone, but also not excluding people based on the fact that they still have to learn.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Yes, to maybe move on a little bit from this topic of maintaining collectives and more about adapting to rising climates and the developing climates and staying grounded in your mission and your values within your communities. Were there specific moments of change that forced you to reconfront your values and kind of like reestablish basically your ground rules or even your approaches to things, or are you really more staying firm to your original values where the collective started off? I don't know, maybe Arjan, would you like to start?
I mean, I turned my microphone on for that one. When we started out with very small club nights of around 300, 400 people. And I think in about a year and a half time, so it happened really quickly as well, we started getting requests from other venues, etc. It was kind of a bit surreal, to be honest, because as a DJ, I also started with Clau, and basically, you know, my own personal career as a DJ, I have Clau completely to thank for that. And the reason why I'm saying it's surreal is because we were so isolated from the scene in Rotterdam, from, you know, of course not in the sense that we all personally went out, but we were just kind of on our own, you know? We did our club nights with Worm, and that was it. So when we started getting more followers, and we started, like, Linda Meide magazine was getting involved, and I remember actually really clearly at the time that we started getting more promo because of them. One of the people in our team, like, posted that same day, like, "Hi, new followers. Just so you know, this is what the party is for. So, you know, if your name is Claire and maybe, you know, this is not the place for you." We were like, to be honest, we were in a sense quite upfront and honest about, you know, who we wanted at the party and who not. Because we did, you know, the parties became wider at a certain point. That's just the reality of it. The bigger we got and the more attention we got. And we found that quite difficult to deal with at a certain point because, of course, we're catering to a specific part of our community. I mean, I'm sure you have this as well with Los Angeles. Like, of course, it's open to everyone, but very often the more publicity we got, kept getting this feedback from people like, you're an exclusive party because you are catering towards a certain community. And we turned them away at the door and said, you know, you can go to the bar across the street at Witte. Like, this is, you know, you have so many fucking places to go to. Why are you knocking on our door telling us that we are discriminating, you know?
It's because your parties are too good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not that I think they would like them necessarily, but definitely at a certain point, I think we had to sit with ourselves and ask ourselves that, you know, nowadays, diversity, all of those terms, inclusivity, they're all kind of like pop buzzwords, and they're sometimes thrown around without any definition or defining of it. Pride has become more corporate, so we really had to kind of sit down with ourselves and ask us, like, what do we actually want with this? Because if we want to keep these parties small for the community, that also means being a bit more being less visible towards the outside world. So I think, you know, we were constantly trying to find this balance between doing bigger gigs, for example, where we could get more money as a collective, which is money we can funnel into our community and we can pay someone, for example, to come give a workshop on, you know, how to navigate like the health system as like trans people of color or queer people of color. But at the same time, it didn't make us any happier to do these bigger gigs. It often involved more trouble with the venues. And like you said, right, it's so important to have like a personal connection with the people who are running the place and stuff. So that also goes away at a certain point. But at the time, we had a really good conversation with a collective from London called Babes. And they had told us as well that, you know, they did like a boiler room and stuff, that they had to like focus on just throwing really small club nights after a long break and kind of doing the parties on an invitation basis, which is not what we want to do. right? Because we want to keep it open for other people, but it's hard out here. Crowd control is really difficult, and to be honest, it's also not something you want to do. You don't want to have to do crowd control. You just hope that people know what to come for, and that's why those people come.
Of course, you just want everyone to have a good time, but some people don't really know what that means, because then they think it's a good time for me and not everyone else. Veerle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have to think about what a colleague of mine always says. He always says that if you have like a place and you invite both the wolf and the sheep, then only the wolf will come. And I feel like I hear that also a little bit in your story. When you're getting bigger and bigger, then that also means that it's way more difficult to make it safe for the people who are already there. At the same time, for Orphic, since we don't have like this specific small group that we dedicated to, this is also a big danger for us. But this is why we decided very directly to not do any bigger parties over like maybe 600, 500, 600 people max. And that also means turning down like bigger options that we also got, bigger festivals, stuff that would pay us well. Because one thing that we also really focus on in Orphic is class and being affordable, and especially, you mentioned climate, and then I also think political climate, and especially in the current social, political, economic climate, partying is also something that is turning way more into a class thing. An only upper class, if you're able to afford it thing. And one thing that we really try to do with Orphic is make sure that our tickets are always low priced. We always have like 50 free tickets for people from different communities with lower socioeconomic funds or backgrounds. But if you do that, that means you have to get money elsewhere. And if you have to get money elsewhere, that means that also people have to buy tickets. And that means that we have to broaden the scope sometimes a little bit. And it's always navigating between those things. Like, we want to make it affordable. We want to make sure that also people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds can come, and at the same time we want to make sure that we keep the space as safe as possible. But that's something that we are constantly trying to navigate in this climate.
Of course, yeah. It's also such a challenging and also very heavy topic, and I really appreciate that you guys were so candid about it. And yeah, I would like to ask, do you have any advice for young collectives, coming up collectives and communities that want to dip their toe in organizing and community organizing especially, and especially advice about dealing with this stress, dealing with this disappointment, not only from the organizing itself, but also from the audience, the members, the community that is coming to join and partake in these events and spaces. Yeah, Val, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, don't do it. No, I think the advice is just, I think, going back to the core of things is like, do something that your gut says feels right. Do something that you don't care about the amount of people or where you do it, how many people are gonna come. It's just do it for the fun of it. Like, I mean, with Los Angeles, we never had any idea or plan or goal. We just like, we want to just book our friends, have a fun night, see how it goes. And you're just going to see who you attract, and then you go from there, I think. And being very much in contact with the people that you want to work with or you want to reach. Yeah, but I'm very much pro gut feeling. So... yeah.
Best feeling in the world as well, yeah. Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that as well. I think nowadays sometimes, like, let me give an example. Yesterday I went to this program discussion that Nachtwacht was organizing, which is kind of like the night watch, and they have been doing really amazing work over the past couple of years to basically bring political viability, etc., for people in nightlife. At the same time, I think the sentiment that I heard there, especially amongst people who organized festivals or are owners of clubs, etc., is everything is getting too expensive, etc., which are definitely real problems. I mean, nightlife is more expensive, the hiring of the venue is more expensive, everything is more expensive, and everyone is pointing their guns at each other for it, which is also crazy sometimes, because I'm like, I think we have, you know, worse problems and maybe better people to come knock on their doors than each other. And at the same time, I also thought to myself, like, you know, there's these plans being made by the municipality to funnel more money into including, for example, hip hop as like a viable cultural genre next to classical music, etc. And I'm very happy about that. But at the same time, some of us don't want to be fucking included, you know? Some of us don't want to have to make ourselves visible towards people who never really wanted to funnel money into us anyways. So I think a big part of it is also, like, when we stopped, for example, we were like, oh shit, what's gonna happen to the city? Like, are there gonna be other queer parties? And these like really young kids who are like 18, 19 are throwing like queer parties, like Blush, for example, which are not 18, 19, by the way, but but My ID, for example, as well, it was really cool for us to see that people were starting these parties. And obviously Worm is a subsidized space, right? So that definitely makes it easier, and I don't want to take away from how important, that's why I'm also saying the work Nachtwacht is doing is very important. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's true what Val is saying. Like, I think the safer clubbing rhetoric kind of became a little bit of a trope at a certain point in some clubs and spaces. And it didn't really feel like people actually understood what that meant or what was behind it. And that's why also, you know, the work that Sex Matters does is really important, because we can provide that to spaces. But if you want to organize something, just do it, and do it how you want to do it. You don't have to be everything. You don't need to make a list of forms of discrimination that you need to put outside of your party, you know? I also, I mean, this is kind of a conversation I have among friends sometimes, but sometimes we don't want to go to a queer club night. We want to go to a straight party so we can be anonymous for one fucking night, you know? So I think it's good that people just do what they're good at and what they're good at doing, instead of trying to be something that they're not, you know?
Of course, yeah. And Veerle?
Yeah, I would also say that it's important to not underestimate how much it matters. Because, for example, a couple of years ago, I had this thing. I really hated Christmas every single year because I didn't have like a nice family situation to go back to. And I always felt so alone in that. And poor me. So I told Ferdi, who is the owner of Orphic, like, I really hate Christmas because it's so traumatic. Can we do something for Christmas? And he was like, I'm pretty sure you're not alone in that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people in our community have the same thing. So we organized a Christmas dinner on the second day of Christmas. And like 85 people showed up, and everyone brought partners that they could never bring home for Christmas, and people who came from like AZC's, what's the English version of AZC? Like an asylum center. People came from there, queer people from everywhere. And that's kind of when we noticed, like, oh, it matters actually a lot that we create spaces. And even though I thought I was super alone in this, I have this shitty Christmas, it turned out that many people have that. And by creating this, so many people felt like, oh, this finally is something to look forward to. And then we did it again next year. And now every year, this Christmas dinner is one of the biggest things we organize outside of raves. And I think that goes to show that if you think, I might want to do something, that it's really important to try and do it, because it matters a lot. And it matters a lot to a lot of people. And I think by doing that, you also learn how much it matters, and it gains so much value from that.
Sorry, it's always someone else is also seeking this community and this chosen family, as Arjan said before. There's always this kind of solitude within a bigger space, and facilitating these smaller surroundings is something very nurturing.
And it also forms this solidarity between different types of oppression, right? So in my head, being queer myself, I focused on queer people who probably have struggles with Christmas. But there are so many other groups who, for various different reasons, struggled during the holidays. And all of those groups came, and they came together. And I think ultimately that's also something we should try, or what I try to aim for, is that we build connections between different forms of oppressed and marginalized peoples, because ultimately we also really need each other.
Of course, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit more about this facilitation of this impact and this basically communal building within your communities and your collectives, and especially with your collectives and within being more public facing. Did you feel that as your collectives became more established in maybe the digital sphere or just public sphere, and you had more access to certain facilities, and spreading the word became a little bit easier because you became a little bit more pronounced, and you could say, and embedded in the community at large? Did you find there were specific challenges to that with this expansion and with growing and being bigger? And were there moments where you were like, maybe this is a moment where we need to reassess and maybe go back to something smaller, go back to being a little bit more intimate, and yeah, like you said before, like reestablishing where the community lies and who's coming in? Yeah.
Can I say something about it? I think for us it's very important to get bigger and more visible and have as much access as we can to as many people as we can, because let's be real, like there's not that many trans femme led things in general. So for us, the more people will know that this exists and is fab and is worth checking out is great. But as you mentioned with the Christmas thing, it makes me think of, we recently did like trans date night, but it was not a speed date event. It was just 6 trans girls coming to Bar Barrio talking about dating trouble. So it's also about knowing, having like maybe like a diverse range of activities that you do. So for example, there's the parties, but also you do some kind of very small nights where maybe only 5 people show up, and both matter just as equally. And for example, this like trans dating night will not attract many people, and that's totally fine, you know. It's once again this like gut feeling, doing exactly something that you're missing. And then, even though maybe you have like a huge platform, I think you're always gonna attract the people that you want if you do it from the heart and from the gut. Yeah, so that's how, yeah, we try to navigate it at least.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah. That anyone has anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is really real, just also in the sense that a lot of people from our communities are working class or come from a working class background. So with Clau, we also always think in terms of how can we make, how do you say springplank? I'm like talking with the most American accent, and then springplank. Stepping stone, yeah. We want to make stepping stones for DJs, for artists, etc., for them to get involved in this industry, next to booking them for our parties, etc. That's why we gave the DJ workshops, for example, or I organized like a little radio tour to invite like up and coming DJs, especially because this talk about the DJ world being oversaturated really bores me a little bit. It's just, I think, very often people's egos getting involved with each other, and they're scared that their career is going to go away because there are more young DJs. And for us, it's important that people from our community also get a chance to comfortably, because, and I'm saying comfortably because for me it was uncomfortable in the beginning to play in places where there were a lot of bros, for example, to provide that stepping stone for people so that they can also not just learn the skill of how to DJ, because let's be real, nowadays DJing is a small part of it. A big part of it is branding, etc. And
Having a digital footprint as well and being visible online. And
Exactly. And you know, yesterday, a friend of mine posted something which I kind of disagreed with, because he was saying like, oh, people need to, it's healthy to disagree with your friends. Oh yeah, like people nowadays, it's like more about the fashion and the image than it is about DJing, and you know, we shouldn't do that. And this is also one of the examples of where I feel like people are finger pointing at each other, because the reason why DJs and stuff have to do that is because the venues are asking that of them, and if it's not the venues, it's the company behind the venue, and if it's not the company behind the venue, it's the, you know, I don't know, the person behind the company. Whatever, that's how the world goes round because of money, unfortunately. That is the reality of it. So I don't think we should judge people for that, and if anything, providing those skills towards people in our community that maybe don't have those skills, it's important as well, you know. Yeah. Next to other activities.
yeah, of course. Thank you. And Veerle, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was thinking of something also, maybe a little bit of a different topic, but one thing that we also really struggled with is that we always had a really drug-open, harm reduction-based approach to substances, and that's something we find really important, and it's a part of our core values. But at the same time, we've had cases where people just made use of that and went way too far. And one time we even had to cut an event short because of that, because we felt like with the amount of people that are so high right now, we cannot maintain a safe space for anyone. So we stopped the event. And that's, you asked about going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what are we doing? And that's one moment when we said, okay, what are we doing and what's going on? And I think it's also about taking preventative measures that align with the values you have, right? So it's easy to say we are harm reduction based and we care about an open drug policy, but what does it mean and what can you actually provide to the people? Can you help them out on how that looks? Can you help them out in terms of how you do harm reduction and how you make that safe? And I think we learned a lot in taking like more preventative approaches rather than having to cancel a party or having to stop a party early because stuff goes wrong. And I think we learned a lot from that. And I think that's also a little bit in line with what you said, giving DJ workshops. It's ultimately also about giving people spaces to learn outside of just, again, consuming a party, making sure that people also take something from a community and learn something and then give something back. And I think that's ultimately also something that drives forward community rather than partying. Right? The fact that people contribute to making it something that is more than just a club night where you buy a ticket, you buy for drinks and you go home again.
It's also about reflecting what your experience was and reflecting also on the other people that are part of this experience.
Yeah, and also acknowledging the fact that your actions have a response or have a consequence for the entire space. And the way that you treat yourself and the way that you treat others, they affect everyone who is there. And I think if you make everyone a bit more aware of that, and not in the negative sense of don't do this, don't do that, but just, hey, just know that we are co-responsible for creating this. I think we saw people act a lot better when we started doing that more actively from the door on, from the earliest announcements on.
Yeah, it's like gentle parenting for clubbing.
Very much. What we also do, for example, is we give everyone volunteer roles. So for example, last event we had like 30 volunteers, and some people place the stickers, other people do this, some people do that, and that's a way to make people feel like it's also their party.
Yeah.
And I think that also really helps.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I saw that we're running a little bit over time, but I have one final question to ask you, which I think is very important, and then we'll lead to the Q&A. Yes, this question is more specific on an individual level. And yeah, that sustaining a collective is not only about the external activities, but of course also about how the group and the people within the collective function together as a whole. You know, how this like digestive tract of this whole group and the collective functions internally to be successful externally as well. And yes, I want to basically ask this final question. How do you deal with this fatigue, with varying amounts of, you know, the time and energy you put into this work, and then, you know, you get certain various reactions back, good and bad, but it must be also very draining for you, and as well as energizing. But yeah, do you have any changes in priorities in your collective and how you basically integrate this emotionality to it and organizing and basically functioning within your own collective beyond the public?
Well, we stopped. that's how we dealt with it. Because I mean, we kind of collectively had a burnout, basically. In a sense, we were all like, all of us were students or were working next to this, which you know, doing unpaid work definitely is hard sometimes, just simply in the sense of being able to make time for things. And we were doing this in our own free time, and it was hard because community is hard. It's not easy. I was just talking with Val as well about how I'm not someone who likes confrontation, but I've been learning over the years, the hard way or the easy way, that it's a necessary part of community. So for us, it was necessary to stop, and it was hard because we were doing really, really well, and we had a lot of eyes on us at the time, and I think people were really excited about us. So it was difficult because we also felt, you know, I mean, everyone has this when you're working in the cultural field. You feel like, you know, being sick for 2 days is going to ruin your fucking career somehow. So I think it's good to, well, I think what we do a lot with Clau is a big group of people. I think it's around 8, 9 of us. So we're very, how do you say, we're very genderqueer about it sometimes, in the sense that we do come together and we'll have like a meeting for our emotions and then a meeting for production, which is also how we want to run things. So, you know, I have my own side projects where I prefer not to have a talk about our emotions every once in a while. But with Clau, it's always been important to do that because we felt like we're not separated from this community. We are a part of that community as well, and that that also means that we're, you know, we would get a lot of criticisms, for example, and some of it was really helpful things that we could take with us, and then some of it kind of just felt like personal projection at times. And you don't want to respond to people like that by saying that, you know, as a response, because people's lived experiences are genuine, real things, and people are not just upset because of what you did. It's because they've been told that 20 times before by someone else. You know, it's a script that plays out constantly. So I think it was important for us to also be able to recuperate, like, emotionally, and then stopping for a while, I think, was a really good decision for us. This was also advice that Babes gave us at the time, that it's also okay to just stop for a while. And if anything, it really helped because we're all a little bit older now. We know how to deal with these things better. We know how to run this better. So,
Yeah, great, thank you. Val, do you have anything to add?
I'm kind of the wrong person to answer because I'm a workaholic. I don't have days off. But, for example, we don't do. We try to space out events. We don't do anything within a 2-3 month range. We also are very clear with venues or partners what our role is. We're there to curate, we're there to give ideas, but all the production, everything else, we're very direct with boundaries and whose job is to do what. So, and thankfully it's been very easy so far in terms of like bookings and organizing. It's just the trust, you know, it's like when people trust you and when people, yeah, I don't know how to better say it, but it goes easy. Yeah, we haven't had any issues in terms of like complications that we, also if you have a complication, it's best to go around it in the sense that you just trust that what you're doing is beyond, let's say, a lineup or ticket sales or yeah, keeping these core values, reminding yourself, and also spacing out events really helps. Yeah, I think that's
Great.
yeah,
Thank you so
and,
much. Yeah. Veerle, anything, final points?
Yeah, I think a final thing to add is if you do everything voluntarily, which is what we also do in Orphic, you need more people. Because when Orphic was founded, it was 3 friends. One of them dropped out really early, and then it was done only by 2 people, and that completely went wrong really quickly because they were also super good friends and everything was on their shoulders, so that didn't work. And I later joined and I got a very specific role, focusing on the community, on social safety. Then we later got someone focused on production. We got someone focused on art. And that's how we are now building and building and building. And now our team is like, I think, 12 or 13 people even. And I think that is really helpful in terms of making sure that it's not too draining for the owner or not too draining for one person, is if you can also delegate tasks away. And for example, now we need someone new to do our socials because today we decided we suck at this and we need someone else. So that's also how you keep on learning and expanding and seeing, hey, we need more people. And I think you also, in your question, already gave the answer for me a little bit. It's draining, but it's also really rewarding. So then it's navigating that and making sure you have enough bodies to carry the weight.
Yeah, of course. It's also about distributing the labor and
Yeah,
just
exactly.
making sure no one gets burnt out like initially. It's really about caring for each other as well.
Exactly, and if you notice that someone is taking on too much, making sure that you are able to take a little bit of that away before it goes wrong. And I think luckily now we have it carried out pretty well, or divided pretty well. But I think that's something to keep on navigating, especially if you do this voluntarily, besides working and living life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Also, final point. It's also not that serious. Like we try to not take ourselves too seriously, and it's also reminding yourself you're doing it for fun. It's a party or it's like a community event. We're not saving lives. So if something goes wrong, it just let it go. You know, don't get yourself too wrapped up in
Let it go with
and
the
being
wind.
too serious and
Yeah, not too deep. Yeah. Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.